I think we're all here, are we? So, I've just got
we can start.
Yeah. Okay. Have we got any apologies for absence, then, Gareth?
None will be provided prior to the meeting, Chair.
Okay. Great. Nearly had one from me, didn't we? So it's right. Okay. Great. Right. I'm just juggling the screen at the moment. Okay. Okay. Before we go any further, should we just do the comments about the right of way offset? Might as well do that now, might we? Gwyn. Oh, Stuart's coming in. Right. Is there anybody else coming in now?
Ian Fraser has an appointment, but he'll join us shortly, just been told.
Okay, great. All right then. And so is that it now?
That should be it then, yeah.
Okay, great. Okay. I suppose I might as well just start the meeting because I know that I'm one of these people that being reminded of things I'll forget. So I'd like to just utilise this quick start of the meeting. Gwyn, you're off to pastures new. Who's this coming in now? Can you hear me, Gwyn?
Sorry, I was on mute. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Great. So I've known you since you've joined the authority some time ago, wasn't it? Was it 2012 or something? When did you actually join?
I joined March 2010. So it's been a good 11 years or so.
It was March time, wasn't it? Thereabouts. And so you've given some time to the authority. But what struck me when I found you were going was that how time flies.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and what have you done in that time?
Don't answer.
What have you done in that time? So, well, let's face it, there wasn't a Wales coastal path in that time, was there, when we first started?
No. I think we did a lot. We've built the Wales Coast Path. There's been sort of various protracted DMMOs that we've managed to get through.
Yeah.
Romney Park and
Yeah.
elsewhere. Ran the road grant for many years, and now that's the Access Improvement Grant. Got another big grants that are going at the moment with NROR. So yeah, I think we made a bit of progress.
There's quite a few things, and so it's and there's been a whole load of restructuring and things like that, isn't there? So I'm hoping the committee will agree. This is your last meeting with us, then, really, isn't it? That's what you're saying, isn't it? So in my usual wit, I would say, "Oh, good riddance, then." But as you've still got a few reports to go, I'm not going to say that to you. But I do want to record, if committee are agreeable. We really appreciate the work that you've done, and certainly, as you said, there's been some changes in the time you've been here. So hope it wasn't anything that we said.
No, not at all. I've really enjoyed working the Vale, but everyone here has been great. So it'll be sad to go. Okay,
great. That was on record. He's sad to go. All right. Depends how long we keep him here for tonight then on this meeting. Okay. So if the committee are happy with that, we'll record our thanks for all of what you've done then. Yeah. Great. Okay then. So the next item on the agenda then is the minutes of the previous meeting. So I'm hoping that everybody's had a chance to read those.
Yeah.
Can I have a proposer and seconder, please, for accepting those? Come on. Do you remember being there? That's the question.
Yeah, proposed.
Yeah. Jerry and Kay. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
We'll accept that as accurate. Okay, great. Right. Okay, then. So item 3 then is the Local Access Forum annual report. I'm thinking that you're going to be leading on this thing, Graham.
That's me, Chair.
Is it really?
That's ours, yeah, that's Democratic Services.
What, has he already got out of something already, has he?
Yeah. Last minute.
Okay, go on then.
Yeah, it's probably quite new because we haven't done an annual report for a couple of years. We're meant to do one every year because of COVID. We've decided we do a composite report for 2019-20, 2020-21. So it's just there to provide members of the public with a brief overview of the work and function of the Local Access Forum. So it's only 4 pages, so it's very brief. And it just covers some of the key points and key aspects of the forum have covered over the last 2-3 years. So for this version, we included the impact of COVID, the Rights of Way Improvement Plan, Welsh Government's Access Reform Programme, the Coastal Access Improvement Programme, the Access Improvement Grant, and also bidding for NRO funding. So as I said, very brief summary, just 4 pages. So I'm just asking for the forum if there's any observations before we publish. I have noticed a couple of typos, so I'll get onto them after the meeting. But in the meantime, are members happy to publish the report for members of the public? Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so content with that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Okay. Right then, so the next item on the agenda then, maintenance reports for verbal updates.
Yeah, that one is going to be me. So ordinarily we would circulate and provide you with a list of what's going on sort of maintenance wise. Some of the databases got flipped over through sort of IT and in the council, and so we're a little bit behind on sort of updating it. So didn't think it was going to be sort of terribly useful to provide those reports whilst we're trying to do that, because we've only fixed it in the last couple of days. But to give you a sort of bit of a sense of what we've been up to, well, this financial year really, we've gone through, we've installed like 45 kissing gates, replacing sort of stiles. So that's all sort of improvements on those routes. Another sort of 15 2-in-1 gates have replaced sort of failed stiles. Another 8 stiles have been sort of repaired. So I mean that's a sort of total of well, it is sort of 68 different structures all around the network. We've popped in sort of 5 new footbridges, which have replaced sort of dangerous structures and cleared a good sort of 35 kilometres of vegetation on the path. So that's some sort of headline sort of stats view. That's the footbridges have been sort of replaced around sort of Aberthin, Wenvo and Penmark. And the other structures have happened all across the public rights of way network. In addition to that, then volunteers have obviously been out on the ground. We've had about sort of 75 inspection reports back, and there's been walk and clear happening on sort of all of the promoted routes by both sort of the Baillieu Morecambe Ramblers and Valeways. And what we can probably do is give you a bit of an example of. Can share this. Let's see, there we go. They give you that. So that's one of the structures that was replaced. So as you can see, in pretty sort of dire condition, and we've gone in and replaced that with a new bridge. So that is that's probably our sort of headlines from around the county on maintenance.
Okay. Any questions or comments from the committee? No. Okay. Moving on then. Can't keep this up. We'll be finished in about 10 minutes. We'll go this rate. Right. Okay. So next item then. Gwyn.
So next item is legal orders tracking and also modification order tracking.
Yeah.
Sandra, are you there? Do you want to talk through where we're up to with legal orders at the moment?
Hi there. Yes, I'm there at the moment. Legal orders have been progressing pretty well recently. The ones you may remember, Darren Farm, Cowbridge, is now completed, is through, as is Susra Farm, Dinas Howys, Those two have been holding on for a while now. What we have been able to move on to is some of the anomalies list, which is, I think, going to make quite a difference there. There's 15 Llancarvan, which is down at Llankedal side on the Fonman estate, which constantly is 8 months of the year underwater. We're moving through diverting that at the moment. Up in Gwenville, we're aiming to move one which goes through the middle of a barn, and farmyard at Greaves Farm, just on the east side. And then over in Colwinston, well, just up from Colwinston, closer to Trioes, Rocastle Farm there. We have a network of footpaths meeting in the centre of their barns and yard. And Fairways, with the local council, did a very good job about 15 years ago, putting a diversion in around the edge of the farm, but it was never made formal. And that's the sort of thing now we're moving on, trying to get through, improve the network there. Okay. There we go.
Okay, and on modification orders, you probably also already got the. In fact, let me do this again. Slide. There you go. So that's the modification order tracking and what we've got going on at the moment. We've got a direction request for Dublin Road to Caradoc Avenue, and that hopefully will be going to committee in January. That's currently set to consultation. We've been negotiating with Atlantic College at St Donat's, and the routes that had been explored for trying to sort of put in an application to claim it. They've offered to dedicate it. That's a much sort of faster, simpler process. So we have provided a draft to Atlantic College on that, which they've sent it back. So that's currently with legal. So looking at that. So we will probably progress that by sort of just straight up dedicating the route. We've got a couple of other sort of outstanding ones. Mill Lane in Bobberton, that will be going out to consultation certainly before I leave. And the Irevile at Troyes and Robbins Close at Barry. They're going to get investigated sort of next year. We've also set something up with a consultant if necessary to do that. And I'm hoping to be able to look at Boston Barry myself. But if that's not possible, then we will arrange for that to be looked at externally. Because at the moment, I don't think we've got anybody that's going to be able to look at it sort of immediately.
Okay, has anybody got any questions or comments regarding those? No. Gwyn, while I'm there, so the Atlantic College one, is that the footpath that was closed for a while because of they were concerned about the safeguarding aspect?
So at Atlantic College, I might be able to show you in a bit more detail, seeing as I've got what's going on here. There we are. So we have, oops, that's not what I wanted. There we are. So here's Atlantic College.
Yeah.
Okay. Green being the bridleway. This is a restricted byway. This is actually sort of coming into the back of the college. And the path that was closed at some point in the past was this East Drive in here. It's not actually recorded as a path at all. So there was a lot of complaints made about it by the local community. But in fact, there's nothing in for it. Now, we did receive an application to claim a path. It wasn't actually to claim this. It was to claim the extension of this path running down back here.
Right.
and connecting to the Wales Coast Path down here at the bottom. So that is currently what we're examining in terms of trying to get something dedicated, and that's what was put in as part of the DMMO application. Now, actually, I mean, trying to work out what routes people might have walked down here, I mean, it's not particularly clear because it's mostly sort of woodlands, but a couple of years ago, in fact, I remember them doing it probably about sort of 5 or 6 years ago, they began to install, like dig out the footings for a little biking track going down there, but they never got as far as actually sort of upgrading it or anything like that. But it does mean that there's a fairly sort of clear, if slightly windy track that's running down there, and that is the route that we're hoping to get dedicated, because that'll then allow you to link straight down to the coast path without having to sort of trespass through St Donat's, which is what people probably do at the moment.
Yeah. Okay, great. And that's interesting because, as you say, you've got the bridleway there anyway, and the other path is fine. So, okay, that's great. That's external to the building side of things, isn't it? Okay, great. And the middle lane, obviously, that's local to me. I'm pleased if that actually gets out to consultation before you leave. There'll be another tick in the box for you. Brilliant. Okay, are there any other questions on that? Any comments? No? Okay. Right. So next on the agenda then is the Green Trails.
Yeah, so I mean, you may have recalled last time we met that we were in the process of applying for grant funding for the Green Trails project, and we've been sort of successful at the expression of interest phase, and we were trying to work our way through the formal application. That's taken quite a long time. Somebody's very noisy. That's taken quite a long
Sorry,
time.
can I just stop you for a minute, Green? Somebody's rattling some papers or something. Is it possible for everybody to mute unless they're actually talking? It's just there's quite a bit of background. All right, thank you. Right, sorry, Green, carry on.
Okay. So where was I? Yeah, so we had been making an application for funding for NROR, and the project that we are trying to run with, it's called Green Trails at the moment. I mean, we'll probably do a bit of a branding exercise to come up with a proper name for whatever this trail is going to be called. And the idea is to try to connect up the 5 counties in the South Wales Central area, linking up hubs of bridleway access in a long distance bridleway and sort of mountain biking, sort of much more sort of recreational trail biking trail that goes around all 5 of them. So we've been successful in getting the funding. And we've now recruited our team. I will sort of briefly introduce Maddie in a second, who's joined us today. She's the Green Trails project officer, who's trying to sort of help sort some of this out. But we've got Maddie, who's a project officer. We've got a senior field officer, who's James Walker. He's the person that put together the original sort of feasibility study for it. And under him, we've got 2 field officers that are going to be there sort of out doing work on the ground. And then in addition to that, we've also got a biodiversity officer who's not actually starting until January, so I will just about miss her starting. So yeah, that's all sort of started in earnest now. The total grant amount that we've got for that is just over £1 million, so it's quite a significant amount of funding. Obviously, that's spread amongst the 5 counties that it's covering, that being sort of Bridgend, Vale of Glamorgan, Cardiff, Rhondda and Taff, and Merthyr. So yeah, I'll just introduce Maddie very quickly, or Maddie, if you'd like to introduce yourself and say hello to people on the left.
Hello, I'm Maddie Sims. So I'm the project officer for this. I've worked with Leader funding before, so obviously this is European funded, etc. So I've worked within the parameters of that. So looking forward to the project. This is day 4, and I've been learning a huge amount in 4 days. So yes, that's me. Not necessarily. I've worked for the council for 4 years now, so I know quite a lot about it already and how to navigate it, etc. So excited about the project, but can't tell you a huge amount just yet because I don't know a huge amount just yet. Thanks.
So yeah, no doubt you'll be hearing more about this project because it's quite a sort of significant chunk of work for the Rights of Way team, and both just for our team and the neighbouring authorities as well. There's a fair bit of the sort of the essentials in the items that accompany the agenda to the meeting. So I mean, if you've got any questions about anything that's in there, then sort of shoot them off at me. To give you a bit of an idea about the extent of the route that's being covered. Sorry for doing this in quite a clunky way, but I've only got the one screen, and so I can't just let's go there. So that is the extent of the route that we're looking at the moment. So it's big. It's covering all of those 5 counties, and there's a fair chunk in the Vale. And so the work is going to involve both trying to negotiate with landowners to dedicate new rights with I mean, in some cases don't exist at all, upgrade footpaths to bridleways, and that may start to sort of rub up against some of the access reform things, I mean, depending on sort of how that goes. And also there's sort of big chunks that go into sort of public estates and NRW owned land and other such things. So Maddie is sort of principally in charge of trying to negotiate the rights. James is going to be in charge of trying to get the thing built. And then there's a big nature conservation element to it as well, which is where Jess is going to come in, and that is going to be in how we go about doing some of the building, how it's managed once the thing is sort of built, trying to produce some toolkits for volunteer groups to get involved, take a bit of ownership of sections of them, but also she's going to be having a look for like areas of like rich biodiversity sort of hotspots that can be sort of tied into this route. So we're hoping to create a big bit of green infrastructure and then use that almost like a big sort of superhighway and improve habitat connectivity through by also producing some of these access opportunities as well. So yeah, we're quite excited about that project.
Great. Anybody want to comment on that? No?
Yeah.
Jerry, sorry.
I was just
Oh,
humming.
Frank.
Looking at the map, there were lots of dead ends. What happens at the dead ends? You just turn around and come back again.
So
is there any plan to join up with eventually, or other local authorities going to be sort of helpful, or they say that's the border?
Well, there's obviously sort of quite a lot to do in our home patch there, so I think we'll try and get that sort of sorted out. But I mean, where it's reaching dead ends, it'll probably be because it's reaching either sort of sections of existing bridleway that are just already there and so don't need to be part of it, or bits of open country that it's feeding into. So the original idea was to try and locate hubs of bridleway access that already existed, and then try to link it up. So obviously that's part and parcel of it. It may also be sort of running into sort of sections that we know that we need to still do a bit of negotiation and finding our way through on. But for the most part, it's all there, and it was all surveyed as part of the feasibility study.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, Frank, you got your hand up.
Yeah, first of all, apologies, Chairman. I was struggling to get on the computer, so I joined the meeting late, so apologies for that. No, I was just wondering about the grant, the £1 million, mostly, which presumably is on assessment, research, planning, coordination, and so on the basis that there'll be very little by 2023 that will be able to be put on the ground, looking at the capital expenditure, which is very minor. The other point is, if the accommodation is all in the Vale, and I take it that's what you mean where the team is based, it's a hell of a journey to get right to the north of the area that you're covering. There's going to be a lot of time spent negotiating with, I don't know, authorities, landowners and so on, out of area, as it were. And Maddie and her colleagues are going to have quite a problem with that, are they not?
And the project as a whole sort of comes off the back of a feasibility stage that ran for, well, 2 years, really. So there's very good relationships between ourselves and our partners in the other authorities, and the officer that's sort of picking up the field officer post has obviously been working with each of those individual officers sort of throughout that time. So part of setting this up has been identifying places where we can store kit in the other authorities. So in terms of bases that we can operate out of to install things that are going in on the ground, then that's all that's being divided up between the different sort of authorities, particularly where we're likely to be doing sort of most work early on. So yeah, yes, the top end of RCT is quite far away, but we have been working with those authorities to try to sort of overcome that, if you like. In terms of the breakdown on what we're spending money on, then yeah, it's all counted as it's all gone in as revenue, but there is a substantial amount for site works and improvements that's within that revenue budget. So the capital, for some reason, they chose to list ICT assets, I think it was, as capital, and so yeah, that small capital amount there does look a little bit odd, but there is a substantial amount in there for both contracting works, where it's major works that are going in, but also procuring like relevant, like gates, and then also the costs of the field officer team that are going to be installing them. So that was probably about half the cost of the project.
Right. Thank you.
Am I right in thinking that when you say revenue, it's, you mentioned contractors, and that's more because of the services they provide, and that comes under the revenue? Is that right, Gwyn?
Yeah, I think in part it's just sort of how the Welsh Government have decided to divide up the different costs. So, I mean, there was a substantial sort of assessment process that we had to go through.
Yeah.
And get to where we are. So we're relatively comfortable with how it's been sort of divided up. But they know exactly what they're doing. They've got copies of the feasibility study, and we've been sort of very clear on where we're going to be installing things and using it for putting in infrastructure and where we're not. Yeah,
Frank, as sorry to labour it, but it's a point that we've been making, isn't it? That it's great that we've got staff to be able to work through this, but often it's the infrastructure that's left behind that we're concerned about, isn't it? So hopefully, well, with the project being laid out in the way it's, then we will see something for it rather than just a linking of trails and on a map. So yeah, okay, great. Sean.
Yeah, it says there that the funding's available through till June 2023. Does that mean that's the completion date for all of this works, or is there another date that we're aiming at to have it all completed by?
So that's the end of the project in its current sort of phase. I mean, the hope is that we will be able to sustain it beyond that date. Now we have sort of built in some mechanisms to try and do that. I mean, in addition to trying to just sort of seek further sort of sources of external funding. So one of the things that we're doing is looking at trying to commission a feasibility study to make a sort of profit-making bike park down near Leckwith. And the hope is that will act as a gateway facility to sort of bring people into the trail. But then, if we can model the business properly, then that might be able to go into supporting the wider trail and some of the ecological benefits sort of further out as well. So yes, 2023 at the moment is what we're working towards, and we're trying to deliver as much of the feasibility study as possible. But the hope certainly is to continue to extend it and work on this project after that.
Thank you.
Great. Maddie, would you like to add anything to that?
No, I sort of agree pretty much with what Gwyn was saying. I mean, I think very much the first half of the project is sorting out the rights of way. I think there's a huge amount of community animation, asset-based community development that comes as part of this project, really, because at the end of the project, we really need a huge amount of community buy-in to look after those routes and those sections of those groups. So I think that community animation, or however you want to phrase it, needs to happen quite early, so that can work on the ecology side as well as users. So it's quite a broad, it'll be a broad range of stakeholders essentially. So so yeah, we'll have to see where we are in 2023 as to what it will actually look like. But excited about the branding and the marketing and where we can actually go with it, because it does go through with 5 counties, and there is a huge amount of collaboration with those counties working together. So it's good to capitalise on that, really.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's a point well made, isn't it? That you wouldn't have had the funding granted unless there was a robust case with demonstrating that collaboration in the first place. So, and for me, and I agree with Frank, it does seem a long way away if you're walking it, but certainly if we've got those links, you know, we're all across the county linking into, we've had some frustrations in the past where we look after a particular right of way and it comes to a boundary and you go, well, that's it. Hopefully in the future we'll have those better linked and whatever. So yeah, great.
Some of those dead ends as well, actually, I think it was one of the questions that Jerry had. They are actually car parks as well. So you could almost have to think as to where people are going to go with their horse box, etc., where they're going to start. You know, it's very different sort of biking. You might want to go for 50 miles, but you probably can't take your horse on such a long route. So I think some of those, I had the same thought really. I was like, why aren't they linked? But those are, a lot of those are car parks as well. Right. So to create that connectivity and user. So thank you.
Great. Okay. Anybody else like to add? No. Great. Thank you for that. That's okay.
All I wondered, we seem to be having a lot of collaboration with other authorities. Do you know if this collaboration is going to continue throughout all of Wales?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Sorry?
Sorry, I missed the tail end of that. Can you repeat it?
Yeah. We've got our collaboration in place for the ones around us, as it were. Do you know if there are plans with other authorities in other parts of Wales to do something similar?
Yeah, so I mean, in part, the terms of the grant and the amount of money on offer was quite substantial. The terms of the grant are towards collaboration, and that seems to be a theme of funding that's emerging at the moment. So there is certainly sort of other regional-based programs that are going on that involve an awful lot of collaboration, and some of those are happening nationally as well. So, I mean, under the same funding pot, the Ramblers Association have been granted money where they are running a Paths to Wellbeing programme, and they've done consultation all up and down Wales in order to try to generate opportunities for volunteers to go out and improve routes around communities that they've selected. Now, it is about 18 communities that have been selected, and as it happens, like, whilst I think one of them is on our northern border, none of them are actually in the Vale themselves, but they're hoping to sort of use some of the training and some lessons that they learn on that to sort of share that experience across all of the authorities. And I imagine that that's going to be a bit of a theme of funding, sort of up and down. I mean, particularly as area statements were released like in the last couple of years. A lot of NRW funding is likely to be area-based going forward, which partly that's why we cut this project to the 5 counties that we selected, because they comprise the area statements that we are in, and I expect there to be a lot more of that.
Thank you. That was a pointed question, that Kay. It's interesting. It was the regional or local access forum chairs meeting yesterday, and it's something which is up for contention the way some of the groups are joining together or not joining together. So we'll see how that pans out in the future. Okay, let's move on then. So the Access Improvement Grant.
So the Access Improvement Grant, for those of you that remember the old Rights of Way Improvement Funding Grant, it's very similar to that in scope, and we received it last year. We received it again this year. It's been quite generous, actually. We probably got, well, not quite double what we used to get in road funding, but certainly not very far off. So a substantial amount that's come to us, and again, it doesn't require any match funding, so that's great. A number of projects that we've got running on those at the moment. Let me do this again. So, I mean, at the start of the year, we put in request for funding for a path that's running next to the primary school in Lantwick Major, another one to extend the path up alongside the cemetery in Lantwick Major again. Newton House Farm has been a bit of a bugbear for many years because it's very, very sort of boggy and muddy. Well, there's a lot of slurry trying to get through there, so we were able to do some improvements around there. Small scale infrastructure up and down and around the county, improving access by replacing stiles with kissing gates and other sort of better structures. We were finishing off a little bit of Cumbarry, sort of footpath 31 next to Porthkerry. We've got an ongoing project trying to get our promoted routes onto Google Street View to try to expand that out and make them available to more people. We had requested a bit of money to improve some of the board walking in Porthkerry. We'd also sort of looked at a path that's running from Ardwin in Dinas Powys. And then in addition to that, we've got a long list of historical anomalies, if you like, on our definitive map. And we were hoping to use a bit of money to try to start sorting some of those out. So of those, we got a couple of pictures. So the path at Cumbarry, we probably started doing that in last financial year, actually, but the weather was so bad right at the start of the year that we had to pull everybody off site. So that's been finished off now with a little bit of drainage has been added, and it's been tidied up from where it was. I mean, it was all but done, and then there was a torrential downpour, and they continued working in it for a little bit too long, and it just turned into a quagmire mess. So it took longer than we thought to get there, but it has got there now. And similarly, sort of Newton House Farm, for anybody that's sort of gone through there, I mean, you can sort of see the slurry there. That's actually probably on quite a good day, but it was previously up to above your ankles, and you were wading through it. On the track itself, we provided a raised stone path that's running alongside and fenced that off. And then we also tried to raise it on a bund in the field as well, a little bit further on, which that's not enclosed. So we'll see how that one goes. But certainly what we've done there is looking really good at the moment. So in addition to that, we've got a start. Well, we're chasing a start date. We've appointed a contractor to improve the path next to the cemetery at Lantwick Major. Most of the small-scale infrastructure, the improvements, that's all completed, and there's a ton of those. They happened all around the county. Street view routes. I mean, I was hoping we managed to upload some of them probably about 2 weeks ago, but it takes a little while for Google to process them. So keep your eyes on the rail trail that runs down near Aberthorpe, because that is all uploaded, and within the next week or so, we expect that to sort of just clunk into gear, and you should be able to view that on Street View. There, we've got a member of staff that's going out, picking all of these things up and doing all the tech side of it, trying to process it to get it on there. So that's all good. Ardwin, we found sort of this year that there's been some massive inflation in the price of projects that are going on the ground. So what we might have expected to cost about 12 grand a couple of years ago is suddenly coming in at some astronomical price. So initially we thought that we were going to be very limited in the amount of physical surface improvements that we're going to be able to do. As it's happened in the end, the amount of money that we'd initially sort of thought we were going to be able to use to improve the path down at Ardwin, we've taken that and been able to do the two projects in Lantwick instead. So we thought we were only going to get one out of it, but we managed to squeeze two. So yeah, that's happier than where we thought we were going to be. And the boardwalking at Porthkerry, we managed to come up with another source of funding for that right at the end of last year. So it wasn't an awful lot in it, so it was just to install it. So so that is all fine now. But the access improvement grant is all but spent out. So we're pretty happy where that's gone. We've been advised that this is a grant that is going to be returning next year, so we're happy with that. Probably in the same terms that we've had it this year. So I mean, to give you a figure, it's roughly £60,000. The old ROIP grant, I mean, initially it was up around sort of 40, but as it tapered off, it came down to sort of just over 30. So it's substantially more than what we were being offered with ROIP. The other good thing that we've been advised of, although it's not sort of been confirmed or anything yet, is that they're hoping to make that offer on a sort of 3-year basis, at least, potentially a 6-year basis. So they're going to be committing to that amount every year for 3 years, hopefully for longer, which is going to make planning some of these bigger projects an awful lot easier. Like trying to live like year to year has always been a bit of a bugbear with these grants, because sometimes things take longer than a year to plan out. So yeah, that's where we are with that.
Has anybody got any comments to it? Frank?
Yes, I take it this comes under small scale infrastructure, but I just wanted to record the locals' thanks to Gwyn and the rest of the team for the work they've done around St Andrews Major. Absolutely brilliant, taking away rickety stiles, putting in kissing gates, all over the place. Absolutely fabulous job. So if that's gone on throughout the county, and I don't claim to know much more than the local area, that's absolutely brilliant work.
Fantastic. Yeah, I'll pass that on to Andy.
Right, I concur, actually. That, the kissing gates are a fabulous improvement, aren't they? I do remember trying to take my family out once. I thought it was a local walk, easy for me, not realising they were counting the number of stiles we were doing. Needless to say, I had some verbal abuse by the time I got home. There we are, kissing gates. We're all happy with those. So yeah, great news there as well about the funding. More than a year's planning. It's just, that's a step in the right direction, isn't it? So that's a big ask of any funding. But no, that's great news as well. Okay, thanks for that, Gwyn. That's some useful projects there, and again, it's visible change that people can see on the ground. Good. Okay then. Was the next one the coastal grant? Yeah.
Yep, coastal access. Let me just find my coastal access. So in relation to coastal, where's it gone? There we are. Yeah, so in relation to coastal access this year, we got quite a good allocation for that as well. So we got sort of big projects, really. The biggest of which is sort of down at Lavernock, where the path that links from Lavernock Church up to Penarth, the condition of it's been pretty terrible for some time because it just gets scoured away by the rain. But also there's been some big erosion events that have brought it, really, really close to the path in a couple of places. So we have an allocation under the Coastal Access Scheme to try and do something about that. And then that has, we've also a substantial allocation under the council's own internal capital scheme to go along with it. So we have appointed external engineers to help us along with that. They're sort of getting on site now with doing some topo surveys, and the hope is to roll the path back, run it down the side of the field, and incorporate some drainage schemes in it as we're doing that. And that should hopefully, certainly sort of solve the erosion issues just by moving it further away from the cliff, but also in providing the new path, then building some slightly better drainage into it on a bit of ground that's slightly higher than the existing path at the moment. Then we're hoping that maybe the constant sort of annual return to that path to try and top it up or do something with it will finally sort of get addressed. The other sort of big project that we've got on it is down at Monknash. Again, little bit of sort of support in trying to sort of make sense of some of the engineering drawings we've previously had done. So they are, again, currently with an external engineer. We're hoping that both of these are going to be sort of commenced in the new year once we've got the tendering done. Likely that they might spill over into the following year. In terms of sort of match, coastal access does require a bit of match funding. So that 45,000 that the council are putting towards rolling back Lavernock itself is also incredibly useful because we can actually use that to match fund everything that we're doing on coastal access without the need to try to allocate staff time and things like that as well. So in addition to that, we've done some work down at Jarlston Pools, trying to improve the section that would otherwise run through, well, literally where the pools are. We've got some diversions going on, be it at St Donat's. I mean, you probably won't notice anything on the ground there because that is just sort of formalising a bit of path that most people were walking anyway, but that tidies that section up. We have a little bit of money in to try to explore some diversions at the summer house, particularly where, I mean, there's a section that's really sort of very, it's practically been eaten away by erosion now. And we've had some discussions with the landowners down there in relation to that. A little bit of board walking going on. Speaking about sort of replacing stiles with kissing gates, then we do have a project on trying to improve the accessibility of some of the stone stiles as well. The bulwarks is something that we've come back to sort of year on year as well, which is the section up the steep ancient monument as you go out of Porthcurry out towards the caravan park and the airport. We've always kind of struggled to come up with a solution to that. Last year we had we paid for a little bit of landscape architect consultancy time to try to suggest some things, and this year we're taking that a little bit further and trying to sort of pilot some initial solutions to see how well they work or how well they don't work. We just served the notice that we need to serve on to Cadw for the Scheduled Ancient Monument consent. Also last year we had an archaeological survey done, so that helped support that as well. So the hope is that we'll be able to do some pilot studies on that this year. Let's see, I might have some pictures here that we can show you of some of these bits. So, yeah, also part of the maintenance, we perform an annual cut, and that's just I mean, usually it's our own ranger staff doing that, just trying to keep the whole area open. Down at Monknash, this is what we're trying to repair. I've probably shown you this a few times before, because this on this side here is a big sort of triple SI, very, very important, and so we've been trying to find a way to do some works in a way that's not going to interfere with that. We reckon we've probably got past that, and I've had a meeting down there a couple of months ago now with NRW, and we think we've got some solutions to that. So that's opening up again now as well. Nash Point East, this was something like the legal side of it was done last year, but sort of at the beginning of this year, then we've gone in and done some of the work to roll the path back. I mean, as you can probably see on that picture, it was getting very, very close to the edge. This hedge here is very deceptive. The edge of the cliff is probably about there. So if you took your time to have a little look through it, then it was a bit worrying. That's been rolled back now and new fence line put in, so plenty of space away. Those are the three diversions that we're looking at: St Donat's, Tresillian West, and this was the work in progress at Jarlston Pools. So previously, people coming through the end of the bridge and dipping down the bottom, there's big outlets just underneath here. And obviously when that was flooded, you couldn't really get through. This was all very uneven up the top, so we've graded that out and bundled it across the top and provided a decent surface for people to walk on there. If there's any questions about coastal access, happy to take them.
No, it's all I can say, Gwyn, is that we haven't got nothing to say about it, because you're making change and improvement, so it's all good news, isn't it? We're not celebrating good news very well here, but yes, well done. If there wasn't something done, we'd have a discussion.
Yeah.
So no, that's great. That's great. No other comments then on the floor? No. Okay then. So next item then is the reform access advice. Is it NRW's thing?
Access reform, yeah. So the access reform agenda has obviously been going on for literally years.
Yeah.
Years now. I mean, those of you that have been on the LAF for some time will probably remember the consultation response that the LAF issued, I don't know, 3-4 years ago now, something like that, in relation to this. So where access reform has gone from there, probably sort of have a look on that sort of summary sheet from NRW that we've circulated. All of the responses from consultation were divided into 3 groups, those being things that were uncontroversial and just need sort of tidying up and sorting out. Then the more controversial changes that they decided they needed a bit more advice on before deciding what to do in sort of taking those forward. And then third set of issues, which I mean, as far as I can tell, really were so controversial they were looking to park them until they could get their head around them a bit more. And that was mostly the inland water sort of side of it. So the ones that you're probably sort of more interested in is the second group there. And again, that sort of splits down into 3 distinct areas that were being explored, and expert working groups were set up for those 3. Now, I'll have to try and sort of recall what they were. So off the top of my head, the first one was in relation to access land and the rights that you had on access land, and also incorporated some of the discussion around wild camping and things like that. So that was, and that's it rubbed up against the second one because it also looked at expanding the rights that you had on access land to include things like sort of cycling and horse riding. The second one was probably the most controversial one, and we obviously had a lot of discussions ourselves about that, which is improving sort of the flexibility of access and how you might go about sort of doing that. So that's talking about potentially allowing horse riding and cycling on what is currently recorded as footpaths. And then the third section was about sort of communicating those rights, and that was more about sort of definitive maps, how you could integrate them across Wales, and whether they could be working a bit harder than they currently do. And so those 3 groups met throughout sort of COVID last year. Coming off the back of that, a further group was set up because certain cross-cutting themes emerged, but just went through all 3 of them. So there was another group that examined that as well. Now, NRW was pulling all that together into a big report, which is now available on the website. I think it appeared there about sort of 2 weeks ago, and it's pretty massive. It's a good sort of 120, 150 pages, something like that. In terms of, I mean, this is really sort of just advice to the minister at this stage. So we kind of don't know what is coming out of it. From discussions with the Welsh Government a week or 2 ago, whatever comes out of it, I don't imagine is going to be particularly fast. So they don't seem to have a slot to sort of take it forward in at the moment. So the advice is there if you want to sort of deep dive into it, but really it is the outcome of those groups rather than sort of necessarily sort of the specific recommendations that are going to be sort of picked up and taken forward. I think really it's probably just sort of watch this space and sort of see where it goes.
Anybody wish to comment? No. Susan.
Yeah, there is comment in the briefings that we've been given about local access forum reform. If I find this large document on NRW, is there any detail on it and how it might affect the group?
I think the honest answer, I'm not sure. I think that the big report was mainly sort of focusing on the Group 2 reforms, and to be honest, that's probably where my attention has been spent on it. So the briefing note that you've got there in front of you that's talking about some local access reform, I think that's probably sort of the as much of a summary as I've seen to anywhere else. They're obviously sort of talking about in the initial consultations whether there were any sort of statutory changes that needed to be made to LAFs and like their function, whether they could have more of a sort of clear role in approving things. And they seem to be sort of shying away from that a little bit. So.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I was reading that briefing note, thinking, right, what is it? It's not clear, is it? What things?
Yeah, I mean, I think
So-
from the discussions that I've heard, I mean, the one that always seems to come out very clearly is, obviously at the moment, LAF membership is supposed to be premised on individuals who happen to have an interest in a particular area, which actually, for a lot of LAFs, makes it quite hard to get people on them, because sometimes it's much easier to have an organisation represented, because then somebody can deputise if somebody else can't make it, and then you get caught at LAFs. So I imagine if anything changes, it will be something around there. But again, sort of wait to see what actually happens.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? No? Okay, so next item on the agenda then is the farming scheme design, sustainable farming scheme. Who's taking that, Green?
Yeah, so I mean, I'll introduce this sort of very briefly. I mean, and this is kind of an open discussion, really, because it came up in a meeting of all the Welsh Rights Away managers across Wales sort of the other day. So at the moment, the Welsh Government are in the process of redesigning the sustainable farming scheme. And that means that we've got a little bit of opportunity to input to them or represent to them like what we might want to see in that scheme. Now the documents that have been circulated there kind of outlines their thinking at the moment. So just to sort of like pull the relevant sort of section out of that, then they were acknowledging that rights away on farmland, and that there might be some benefit in enhancing rights away beyond what the statutory requirements are. So they're hoping that the scheme will support farmers to upgrade footpaths to multi-use paths. And obviously, that again, there's that parallel work that's going on with access reform that has some interaction with that. Enhance existing paths by sort of doing basic sort of improvements on sort of surface and furniture and other structures that you might find on rights of way. Trying to establish new joined up routes, and then also establish new access based on the priorities that might be set out in local plans. So we, as rights of way managers, were approached by the Welsh Government, and the presentation that you've got there is one that they gave to us in trying to sort of seek some input on how that might be developed and how it sort of might go ahead. So really, I was just kind of bringing that back to the LAF, because if you have further ideas on the kinds of things that you want to see or not see in achieving those objectives, then I would be very keen to hear them. I mean, we're expecting to be able to sort of put some of these ideas back to the Welsh Government probably by about mid-January. So if you have immediate thoughts, then I'd be grateful to hear them. But if not, then also happy to have some things written out, and we'll try to sort of take account of that in any response. I don't think it's a particularly closed process. If the LAF itself wanted to make a response on the basis of the presentation that's there, or indeed to ask somebody from the Welsh Government to explain further, then we could pass that on.
Any comments? Frank?
Yeah, I was interested to note in the description there that local authorities must contribute less than a quarter of the expenses reasonably incurred when landowners are looking after their footpaths. My guess is that the Vale go above and beyond that in providing all sorts of infrastructure to help the farmers along the way. Am I right, or is that not the case?
So, without sort of trying to pick out with what their exact wording was on that.
If you go onto the written blurb, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th paragraph down towards the end. Or 3 up from the bottom, 3rd paragraph up from the bottom of the text. I'll read it. Under the Act, landowners are responsible for maintaining gate stiles and similar structures across rights of way. Local authorities must contribute no less than a quarter of the expenses reasonably incurred when landowners carry out works to these structures.
Yeah, that's what I thought it might be. Yeah, that's part of the Highways Act. So how that tends to sort of pan out in practice is that local authorities will either, where it's worded in the actual act is that we can provide between 25 and 100% of the costs, but that's obviously done on behalf of the landowners. They will retain liability and responsibility for those structures. So in practice, depending on sort of what it is we're doing, then we will generally provide a lot more than that 25%. We will either usually provide the kit and ask them to install it themselves, or we will just go and install it ourselves. And the reason for that is partly so that we know that the stuff that's going in is actually going to meet British standard and be up to spec and be installed properly. And partly because if you don't do that, I mean, you end up going down like more of an enforcement model where you're trying to sort of constantly go back and check the work that they're doing, serving notice on them and incurring legal expenses. And actually the price of doing it often doesn't warrant going through all that. So most authorities will do like one or the other or a mix of both, in so much as they like supply the kit or supply the labour or do both. And we probably do that. I mean, where we tend to sort of stick our feet in is if we want to replace a stile with a kissing gate, for instance, and somebody sort of refuses to accept it, then at that point we will sort of step away and say, well, you know, actually you sort it out and bill us for the 25%. If somebody's sort of trying to sort of stick to the rules, but generally it's a lot easier to try and work with the landowners. They feel like they're getting something out of it, and it's usually a lot easier to just get it done as well.
While I've got the floor, Chairman, can I make another point?
Yes.
Top of the next page, under the actions that farmers can carry out, obviously in consultation, is the business of upgrading the paths to multi-use. And this applies to the work that Maddie's going to be undertaking as well. This business of the conflict between different users, the pace of different users, and also the business of wear and tear when you've got horses and cyclists as well as walkers using the rights of way. It's an issue that seems to be almost glossed over in this and in what you were talking about, the big network with establishing the greenways. How is that being addressed in terms of avoiding that conflict and making multi-purpose paths actually reasonable for those three purposes?
Well, I guess that comes down to sort of like what particular sort of stream you're trying to answer. So in terms of the sustainable farming scheme on this particular agenda item, then that is a point to sort of raise and feed back to them, because this is obviously going to be sort of an annual, well, will inform an annual rule payment, hopefully. So that is one of the points that that we might want to pick up with them and say, like, you know, if you're upgrading it, then consideration for how you're going to try and sustain it beyond that. In terms of the project that we're running at the moment, then I mean, each of our routes have been out and have been surveyed. So I mean, where possible, we've tried to ensure that the routes that we are selecting are of such a character that they can handle like bridle traffic, be that following farm tracks or sort of existing tracks or through forest extraction routes or what have you. Where clearly they're not going to be up to the task, then in the route cards that we've drawn up, then we've identified those sections as needing a bit of surfacing or a bit of improvement. And I guess the interesting sort of questions around all of this is how our project, or a project like ours somewhere else in Wales, interacts with the desires of the sustainable farming scheme to provide annual payments for upgrading to multi-user paths, and then how that also interacts with anything that might come out of access reform, and whether there might be some kind of one-off payment or something else going on with that, and how they all sort of mesh together. So I think for responding to the sustainable farming scheme, then that's probably something to highlight, and probably something for us to have a think about, sort of how we want to sort of suggest those things get dealt with. But for instance, we're trying to create bridleway rights from footpaths or nothing that's there at the moment. We don't particularly want our negotiating position to be scuppered by something that might be coming down the road that may potentially look like more lucrative, or just sort of different in such a way that it's not worth sort of diving straight into what we're offering now, and the same again for access reform, I think.
Okay, thank you.
So taking note of that then, because you were asking some views, do you want to propose that then, Frank? Have we highlight that as a concern? Because we did this in the previous.
We have. It's something we've discussed at length, and it has to be resolved in each instance, of course. But it would be good to have some overriding principles of how you tackle the conflict and the maintenance, future sustainability of each of these paths.
Yeah, because I'm curious as to when you had the presentation, Gwyn, whether they mentioned or discussed this particular aspect of it.
I think we may have raised it afterwards, but I mean, at the moment they seem to be sort of gathering thoughts. I think it's at quite an early stage, so it's a really good one to raise, particularly for the sustainable farming scheme, because that's probably a bit more flexible than some of the like one-off grants or legislation changes that come about. Because if you are able to pay farmers to keep things sort of topped up and maintained, then it's likely to happen if their real farmer payment is based on it. So incorporating that kind of standard into it, that could be quite a useful suggestion.
Yeah,
and it's not something that they are otherwise required to do at the moment as well. So so they're always looking for things as part of these schemes to lift it up beyond like what they're all automatically required to do. So that'd be a good one to feed back on, take that on board.
Is the committee agreeable to that, to be raised in that way? Yeah. It's difficult to quantify, but certainly they need to be at each stage, isn't it? Recognizing that we are still curious as to how this is going to come out in practice. So, if you don't mind, that'd be great if you feed that back.
I think there's definitely a bit of thought there to try and work out the difference between a footpath that you have permissively upgraded to allow horse riders onto it and a load of payments accompany it, to an existing bridleway that people can go on anyway. Because you don't want to end up in a situation where people would be better off having a footpath and permissive rights than if they just automatically have a right on there. So I think it can potentially sort of get quite technical and complicated.
Just saying that as well, is it case by case, really, isn't it? You just don't want to blanket and answer that. I recognise that, and I also recognise that there's a suggestion that watch what you say about one particular scheme because it will threaten another. And you've done so well to get the grant funding. We wouldn't like to be seen to be, there's the rail laugh. Let's not provide for them. So it's a balance. Sorry, Susan.
Yeah, I was just going to comment as well. The issues again, if the money that comes with the sustainable farming is short term or long term, because if you get involved in, as you say, changing a use from a footpath to something bridleway, but you've only got funding for a year, and 2 or 3 years down the line, then the Vale is looking to substantially invest in it to keep it up to pathways for both users. So you'd be looking for long-term funding if that moves.
Yeah, so my understanding is the scheme is currently in design and they don't expect it to be implemented until about 2025. But the kind of scheme that you're looking at, it will approximate either sort of rural payments that are disappearing because we're exiting Europe, or as the follow-on to what we've had with sort of Tir Gobel in the past, or probably a blend of the two really. So I think I strongly suspect it's going to be structured more towards like continuous support of farming, and then sort of the terms that you get in there will be around some environmental stewardship as it would have been in the past. So I suspect it's probably not going to be a big one-off payment and then there you are, off you go. It's probably going to be a continuous thing because that's been the character of it in the past. The problem that we have had in the past is perhaps in Tir Gobel, where they included payments for trying to provide additional access by permission, is the scheme had a life of 10 years and it was great whilst it was running, but at the end of those 10 years there was nothing really to stop people just sort of shutting the paths that had been available by permission, when actually quite a lot of work had gone into creating them in the first place, and everyone kind of got used to being able to use them. So I think having some sort of exit strategy, if it's going to be phased like that, is probably another good point.
Great. Okay, anybody else? No? Okay, that concludes the items on the agenda. Do we have a date for the next meeting, Gareth? Or is it...
Well, Chair, with Gwyn going, I'll have to liaise with Steve around report arrangements to the LAF, so it probably won't be until March or April the soonest. So I'll liaise with Steve on that.
Okay, thank you. Right, okay, so Frank, just so you're aware, at the beginning of the meeting, I was reticent and I might forget this is Gwyn's last meeting. So he's going to pastures new, and so we've given a vote of thanks and for all the work he's done on the area since he's been here. A quick 12 years or 10 years or so, isn't it? 10 to 11 years. So how time flies, Frank, even in your time.
Man and boy.
Man and boy. You've seen them come and go, don't you? So just to reiterate, thanks for all the work you've done, Gwyn. So I really appreciate that. Okay, if nobody's got anything else, it's remiss of me, but I would just mention anybody volunteering for the vice chair. Nobody, just thought I'd throw that in. Somebody give me a Christmas present, please. Say they're going to put their name down. No, okay, I'll leave that. Right, okay, on that note then, Merry Christmas everybody, and look forward to the additional team members. See you in the future, so have a good one. Take care.
Bye.
Thank you everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Bye. Cheers.
Ooh.